Elliot, welcome. It's good to see you again. We've been talking a lot, but excited for our 3-day session we have here kicking off today.
Outstanding. I'm excited too, Kyle. Thank you so much for this opportunity, man. I've been really looking forward to this conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, mastering rental growth. We got 3 days. Today's around the mechanics of efficient rental growth, and just want to welcome more people. Buck and let's see, Jeanette from Fast Track. Good to see you. Steve, Wallace, Kurt Barney. We haven't talked to you in a while, so a lot of good people on today. Um, this is going to be very interactive. I've got questions. Ellie and I can talk for hours here. We're going to try to keep it about an hour. But as people are listening in, feel free just to chat questions and I'll make sure we read those here. This is obviously for rental companies, for rental owners. That's the purpose here. So as we kind of go through this today, feel free to chat in questions and we'll make sure we get those to Elliot. So, Elliot, with that being said, for people who don't know you, maybe just a brief 30-second background of what you do and your experience in the rental industry.
Outstanding. Just kind of real quick, I've been in the industry for 25 years. I started off working for United Rentals. Uh, Worked here in Denver, Colorado with them, and I did such a good job that I got demoted to Las Vegas. And I became a vice president for them and worked in Las Vegas in '07 and '08, which was the big boom and the big bust. And I got to watch what happens when a company is extremely successful in a booming market like Las Vegas with billion-dollar job sites. And I got to watch what happens when you have a global financial collapse in 2008. I came back to Colorado. I got a job with Ahern, which was also at that time a top 5 rental company, but it was privately owned and operated. So there was some interesting dynamics there. Worked for them through a bankruptcy, worked through them trying to gain new market shares, and worked all the way up to the executive team with them as a national sales trainer. And then a lot of people know that about 18 months ago, United Rentals bought Ahern Equipment, and I found myself not being part of the new acquisition. And because of that, new opportunities presented themselves to me, and I got the chance to go out and start my own business, working with sales teams and teaching them some of the things that I've learned in my 25 years. The good thing is I have a degree in education. So this is right up my alley, teaching and genuinely helping people because it's where my heart's at. And I've had the amazing opportunity to work from New York to San Diego and from Seattle to Miami and all up in and around Canada. It has been an epic journey the last couple of years. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. And in the Zoom world, we're all Zoom here.
Absolutely.
And for the people who don't know his whole background, you're obviously speaking at the Future of Rental show in January. You've been a guest on our podcast, Rental Roundtable, I think guest number 5, and I think it's still the record for most listens for that episode. So um, people like to listen to you, and obviously you do speaking engagements across the country. So just to set things up, right? We're doing 3 days. Today is the mechanics of efficient rental growth. Tomorrow, the anatomy of building a powerful sales team. And Friday, unlocking new markets and niches. So we're going to try to keep the sales conversations to tomorrow, new markets to Friday. So just trying to jump in here, right? Why we're all here, the mechanics of efficient rental growth. We're going to talk about it's not grow at all costs, but how do you grow sustainably, especially with the market changing. But to kind of kick things off, Elliot, what are like the first 4 or 5 ways that rental companies win? Obviously, we're going to talk about the efficiency side of things, but first of all, what do you need to do to make sure you're winning and serving your customers well?
Yeah, I think one of the key things for efficiency is you have to know what you're good at. And so, we can talk about you can be more efficient with your yard, you can be more efficient with your customer interactions, but really what it boils down to for efficiency is what's your niche? And so you see rental companies out there and some of them focus on big giant earth moving equipment. That's what they do. And it's a different business model than somebody who says, look, we're going to focus on the homeowner. And the reason why I mention that is because if you're going to be efficient, those are 2 totally different customer bases. And efficiency really comes from how well you serve your customer. And if you're going to serve your customer well, you better know who they are. And the things that factor into that, you have to know what your fleet is. You can't be everything to everyone. I get to ride around and spend a lot of time with a lot of rental companies. And you'll see people where, hey, we one time had one customer who mentioned a carpet cleaner. So therefore, we need to go buy one. and you never hear from that person again. And you're just not running an efficient business if you're spending money on things that is not your core customer base. The second one is how do you conduct your business? Like, what is your sales? Are your sales reaching out and going and hunting for new business? Is it branding and marketing and bringing business to your business through social media or your website? Or do you just go by word of name because you've been in business for 55 years? Every one of those is a different way of going about your business. And I can't give you one general answer if you don't if you don't conduct business the way everybody else does. Another big factor that plays in is location, location, location. We've all heard that in real estate. And the truth is most people don't want to do business with somebody who's more than about 30 to 40 miles away from them. I don't know why it is, but I think a lot of people have learned that it's about convenience. And if you need to get a service tech or something, if the person's more than about 30 miles away, the quality of service drops exponentially. So the truth is as a company, you really don't want business that far out either. So that's how you effectively manage your business is you got to know where your core is, because if you land a deal that's 90 minutes away, can you afford to lose one of your service techs for 90 minutes? And that's 90 minutes each way. And then the last one is how easy is your business to do business with? And a lot of people don't evaluate this. The reason why is because you're not doing business with your business. You show up every day, and guess what? If you need to rent something, you just put it in the back of your pickup truck or strap it to your tailgate and you're off and about. But have you ever sat down and asked your best friend to show up at your company and rent something? And what was their experience like? You might be surprised how hard it is to do business with your business. And I think those efficiencies of understanding, you can't grow if you don't know where you start. And I think that's a critical one. Where are you in the market? Are you trying to grow and gain more market share? Or are you staying where you're at, but you want to better penetrate the new customers that are moving into town? Each one of those is a completely different strategy. We'll cover some of that when we get into sales and new market penetration. But I think if you're going to do good, sustainable managing of your branch, you really need to, do what I call a self-evaluation. The book Traction, you kind of have to sit down and say, who am I? What are we all about? And I'm a big one for goals. What does your company look like 2 years from now and 5 years from now? And if you just say, hey, look, I just show up every day and I run a rental business, then you're going to probably get beat by somebody who's got an amazing plan, amazing goals, and great focus of where they want their business to go.
You said a lot of great things. I love the Traction book, the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. We use that. A lot of the leading groups we talk to also use that. So there's starting to be, if you want one quick takeaway, buy the $15 book on Amazon. It's worth it. I talked to other groups, like, what's your plan for 2 years? Like, I don't know, I want to be bigger. Like, but why? Like, what are you actually solving for? Because I think a lot of people will just say, oh, we're going to grow faster and bigger, but to what end? And part of the efficient rental growth is talking about growing sustainably within your means. And the other thing you said was around your niche, which was the first thing you mentioned. You have to know your customer, know who you are, and you can't be, everything to everyone. And that, in some sense, you're in that case, you're nothing, right? Because you haven't picked your focus. A lot of this comes down to being honest, though, with yourself. Where is your rental business today, right? Where are your strong points? Where are your weak points? And then where's your plan, right? So I think, Elliot, me and you could talk about all these different ideas, et cetera, but it really starts with the owner and the vision of what they're trying to solve for, right?
Absolutely. And here's the big thing. Since we're talking about efficiency, I recently talked to a business owner. When I say recently, I mean this morning. And he called me up and he said, I want to get an outside sales team. I said, outstanding. I think that's awesome. And he said, so I'm going to hire a sales manager. And I said, I think that's great, but whose company is it, yours or his? And the owner of the company says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if you hire the sales manager and tell him to build your sales team, he might build it for what he thinks will work for your company. The truth is, and you said it honest, or said it perfectly, be honest with yourself. what do you want out of your company? What is your company going to look like? And are you hiring other people to solve your problems? Or are you looking for them to coach you, but ultimately the decision's up to you? And I say this on multiple levels because some of us are going to go to a big equipment show. We're going to go and we're going to roll up and we're going to have vendors call on us. We're going to have equipment manufacturers call on us and say, hey, I need you to buy $1 million worth of X brand. And it sounds really great. Is that your core market? Do you have that business on the books? If you're going to buy $1 million worth of skid steers, do you have $1 million worth of skid steer business coming up? Do you have the client and customer base? Or are you buying $1 million worth of skid steers and you've got a bunch of homeowners that only rent it on Friday and bring it back on Saturday, and you spend more time putting the equipment in and out than you do making profits on it? And half of the units don't even move. And I think a lot of people need to be very, very strategic in the coming 2 years with what fleet they buy and what is their niche. And the two of those need to match. And I think it's kind of interesting, and not to plug quickly, but a lot of times people are processing their orders and they really don't evaluate at the end of the year, what is our highest utilized piece of equipment? Where are we getting our best return on investment? Let some of that data and let some of those stats and let some of who is your 10 biggest customers? Let that information dictate what you buy and how you manage. You know what I mean? Because as a company owner, you don't see everything. You see the bottom line and say, look, we turned a $20,000 profit this month. We turned a $100,000 profit this month. Perfect. How did you do it? And how do you expand it? And I think a lot of business owners fail to do that.
Yeah. And I think what I'm starting to see is that the market is getting more competitive, or there's a slight softening potentially happening. And if either one of those two things are true, then you have to tighten down. You have to be more efficient, right? And this is what we're talking about. And 3 years ago was different. If you had a skid steer, name your price, it would be rented, right? That's not where we are 2024. And you said something about next 2 years, right? Fleet and niche. And I think that the companies that are positioned to be efficient are the ones that are going to win in this next period we're moving into. So if I'm a rental business owner and I'm sitting here going, okay, well, I haven't actually put the thought into it, and I feel a little exposed now that Elliot's saying these things. How do I get started? How do I get started thinking about putting in the work and to develop that strategy, to develop exactly what are my objectives? Who is my customer base? How do I start to put together that plan?
That's a brilliant question. That's a brilliant question. If I had to answer that, I would say sit down with your core. You've got 2 or 3 people. You have people that, like you and I bounce ideas off each other. We have other people we bounce ideas off of. And I get blessed enough that there's people who call me up and they ask me questions. And I don't even necessarily work for their company or work with their company, but they just want to bounce ideas off of. And if I had to make one recommendation, I would say find the 3, 4, or 5 people that are most understanding of how you run your business. And I would have a heart-to-heart roundtable talk and say, look, what do we need to do? And give each person, quote, their own moment in time. Tell me what we need to do operationally. What do we need to do in service? Where do we have inadequacies in processing orders? Where have we overfleeted? Where do we have glitches in the sales and rental process? Meaning that if somebody comes up and they pull into our yard, the first thing we have is dropping off fleet, returning a fleet for our semis, for outside customers, whatever it is. And what ends up happening is that creates a clog. So you as a business owner don't see it on a day-to-day, but I would sit down and I would challenge your team and ask them ahead of time so you don't just dump a crazy question on them. I want you to evaluate our business for the next 10 days, and I want you to find where we can tighten up our game. And then I would ask for, quote, a secret shopper. Find somebody to come for the first time to rent a piece of equipment from you. How hard was it? Did they have to show up with a credit card? Did they have to show up with a driver's license? Did they park in your yard and wait for 45 minutes for someone to help load them up? Did the unit not start on the first pull or the first twist of the key? Every one of those things should be an eye opener to you as a business, because here's the thing. Let's just call a spade a spade. The big five, the biggest five rental companies in the market, and I won't name them all, but we all know who the big five are. Those big five have a competitive advantage over everyone else. They can buy it cheaper. They get better interest rates. They have better brand recognition, and they have more market coverage. That puts everyone else at a disadvantage. Now, one of my friends who's a Navy SEAL, he said, as Navy SEALs, we look for every advantage we can get, no matter how minuscule it is. And so I would ask every business owner, is like when they sit down and do that roundtable with their team, how can you gain efficiencies? If you can process an order 1% faster and you do 100 orders in a week, you just made that entire process faster and better. If you can make a customer go through your yard 5 minutes faster and you process 20 orders in a day, 5 minutes times 20 orders, you just freed up an hour and a half, which affects your labor, which affects your cost, which makes you more efficient, which will help you compete with these people that are buying equipment for maybe 20% cheaper than you. Like, we really got to be smart at this moment. Otherwise, we're going to get rolled over just because of our inefficiencies. And kind of to play off of it, you made a brilliant statement of, the last 3 years, it was all about who had the fleet. You mentioned the skid steer. If you had it, you were getting the business. And I think there's a problem, is that when the refrigerator's full, you don't have a problem with being smart with what you cook and how much you waste. But when the refrigerator is empty and things are getting a little tighter, like you mentioned, either a softening of the market or some people over fleeting, there's been changes in the market and everybody's feeling it right now. And the problem that's going to happen is, if you don't know how to be tight and efficient when the fridge is full, you're really not going to have the skills when the market tightens up. And I think that's right now where we're at. We're at the cusp of some people overfleeted. The market is softening ever so slightly, be it an election year or be it just interest rates have caught up with everybody, whichever it is. And that combination is making people think, what do I need to do to make my business run better?
You mentioned there's a few comments, things I wrote down as you were talking. I think going back to the strategy piece, the fleet and the niche, and I think it's important to find those 3 or 5 people you trust, sort of your inner circle. I think what I found is also, you ask 10 people, you get 10 different pieces of advice, and you can zig and then zag at the whatever the winds are doing. But I think there's an element of, thank you for your feedback, guys, but this is my decision. I'm the leader, I'm the owner here, and you got to own that, for better or worse, right? And I think sometimes people are sort of on autopilot, and I'll buy more fleet because they're buying more fleet. But does that actually fit your business strategy? Does that fit your niche? Does that fit your market? I think
that's brilliant, by the way. I'm going to interrupt you. That is absolutely brilliant. You might want to repeat that.
Well, I've learned that myself. Like, we've had advisors and investors and like, you should do this, hire this person, you should do that. And good advice, bad advice, but it wasn't my business. And I sort of was at the point of like, if I'm going to run this, I got to, I'm the captain of the ship. If it goes down, I'll be the last one on the ship type of thing. But it had to be my decision because it has to be authentic to who you are. And I think Ami Kassar came on at the Rental Roundtable. He talked about the niches to riches strategy. But at the end of the day, you have to design the business for you and your whole life, not just your business life, but your family setup and really everything. Who you are as a person has to be aligned all the way through your business and organization. And I didn't want to skip over that because me and you are giving some thoughts here that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, the owner of the business needs to decide what they want to do, right? And I think that's a very personal decision. Do you raise money? Do you do 1 location? Do you do 10 locations? Do you sell the company, right? I think that's something that every individual needs to make. And I think until you have that fully clear in your mind, all these other things we're talking about don't even matter as much.
That's right. And I agree with you 100%. Here's the big thing. You as a business owner, like everybody, hopefully a lot of people on this video, you do have to sit down and you have to have a plan, like map it out. I run into a lot of companies, and the thing is somebody gave them the business. They were involved in it. They said, you know what, I get it. You buy equipment and people show up and rent it. That's great.
Yeah.
But then I watch people and they make a lot of really poor business decisions because of just what you said. They get bad advice. Uncle Willie said, I need to buy more bucket trucks. And all of a sudden you got 5 bucket trucks. And guess what? Most rental companies don't do bucket trucks. They're all owned. Like probably 90% of people on this call are like, what the hell's a bucket truck? And those types of moves, like you just said, I think are also distractions. But I would strongly encourage, sit down and map out who you are, what your business is, and most importantly, where the hell are you going?
And it's got to be a personal thing, right? And I think the Traction book's great at that. There's a lot of frameworks out there, but that's the first thing I wanted to sort of briefly touch on. You also mentioned the Big Five competitive advantages. You know, and I was thinking Big Five. I was watching the Olympics, thinking about like the Big Five, like U.S. men's basketball team, and like you've got LeBron and that's sort of like the nationals, right? And it's like, well, you know, they won gold, but the small guy can't beat them, and the independents can beat the national players. How do the independents win against the nationals, especially in we're talking about official? You know, there's not trillions of dollars to be spent as an independent player. How do they beat the nationals who have more budget, more scale, more economies of scale, things like that?
That's well, you got some doozies today. I think the biggest thing is you really have to listen to your customers. Because here's the thing is that the small guys have a disadvantage, but they have an advantage. They're more nimble. They're more easy to maneuver. You gave the example of the Olympics. Here's the thing. LeBron James has the way LeBron James plays. And he has the ego and the style that goes with it. When you get him to play with different players, there is a natural, anytime they mention the dream teams, there is natural clash because some of these guys hog the ball a little bit. They're not as nimble. Where if you find these little guys who all they want to do is win, they are more likely to make the changes that need to happen. Here's the thing. Doing business with United Rentals probably will not change at all in the next 5 years. Like they have a way of doing it and that's their way. Where the small guys can say, look, we're going to change our fleet up. We're going to get another location. We're going to hire a better driver or inside counter person. We're going to get a better way for people to order. We're going to talk to our customers. And if 40% of our business is customer pickups, we are going to walk out and literally put lines in the road on efficiency of how to run people through our business. You know, and I look at companies or you may say, you know what, I hate the one-day rentals because there's no profit in it. Well, change your business, evolve your business. And I think that if the more you cater to your customers, the more they're going to appreciate the fact that you genuinely care, and they're going to go with a company where they're not a number. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, but if you are not Kiewit, Swinnerton, Skanska, if you're not one of these major national construction companies, the Big Five really don't give it the same level of attention. Where we all know that the bulk of our customer base, if they're dropping $100,000 a year with us, $10,000 a month, they're a great customer. For United Rentals, that may not even show up on their radar, which is very alarming. And so you could cater to that person and make them feel massively significant because they are. And all of a sudden they realize you care and you're building a great relationship. You know, you made the comment that, you know, you had somebody on and they said niches to riches. Your niche could be that small to medium-sized contractor that some of the top performing Big Five rental companies don't even bother with. And there's a boatload of money to be made there. It's actually more businesses. And here's the thing is if you lose a Skanska, you're going to feel it. You know, that's $1 million a year in rental that you're going to feel. Where if you lose Bob's Plumbing, if you've got 30 Bob's Plumbings, it will not destroy your company.
Mm.
And I think that's a big one is you really got to look at how do you cater to your key market players.
Mm. I think one thing I saw on your LinkedIn, maybe from this week, I think I wrote down, you said, in rental, we often focus on speed of transaction and not quality of service. And I think speed's important, but only to the extent that it serves the customer better, right? And maybe there's some efficiency and cost saving, but really around what your point was, let's focus on the quality of service. And actually, a question we have is what's the related to this? What's the best way to obtain anecdotal feedback from our rental customers to ensure we're truly catering to them? So, with the focus on serving customers well, how do you know if you're doing that well?
Whew. I would if I had to do this, I didn't know that question was coming up. If I had to do this, what I would do is I would do they do those, I think they're called and help me out here, Kyle, Quiz Monkey or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they do these little quiz monkeys where you can send it off to a customer. If they fill out some of their feedback, and you can do it however you want. I mean, you can have a company do a QR code for you. You can do a link to a simple questionnaire, and you give them 10% off their next rental. Then it
Mm.
serves two purposes. One, you get feedback. Two, you get repeat business.
Yep.
Like it's a win-win. And you sit there and you say, well, I mean, it's not going to kill you, give them 10% off. And all of a sudden, you're gaining feedback on what it's like to do business with your company.
Mm. Yeah, and the other thing, like, there's other softwares out there. One thing we do at the end of a rental, we can send an email, thumbs up, thumbs down, and you get that feedback logged. And if it's thumbs up, it'll, hey, great, you want to leave a 5-star review on our Google page, and you start generating reviews, which obviously is a huge brand importance for growing the business. But there's also just asking questions to customers. Hey, you've ran with us before. How was your experience? It's like you go to a restaurant, the owner comes by. Hey, want to make sure everything's okay. Is there anything we can do better? A lot of it's just talking to people directly too, because I love software and systems and machines, and there's an element of that, but sometimes just getting out there and asking people, how can we serve you better?
And that is critical. People buy from people. And here's the big thing is they've proven that if somebody has a bad experience, you know this, if they have a bad experience, they tell 10 people. If they have a great experience, they tell one.
Yeah.
So if you don't nip it in the butt right off the get-go, like it can be massively detrimental. You only get one chance to quote fix something that went wrong. And every one of us in the rental business, and it's a different type of sale, it is all repeat business.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way we make our money is with our loyal customers and big relationships. And I'll ask every single person, what are you doing to build those relationships? I mean, are you sitting there as the person walking in, and every time they walk in, somebody's like, yeah, can I help you? Or is it they're walking in and they're like, Kyle, oh, Kyle, it's great to see you again today, sir. What can we get you today? Here, let me walk you out to the yard and show you some options we've got. Now, that person probably knows exactly what they want, but it's like Norm on Cheers. You want to go where everybody knows your name. And that type of connection right now, every single one of us learned during COVID the value of human connection. And if you want to differentiate yourself, you need all the technology to make the business run as fast and efficient. The real purpose of software, and I know what a hardcore software guy you are, is it takes care of all of the mundane, monotonous tasks that are wasting our days. And if you're not looking at that, then you're the same person who's starting to make a fire at 4 o'clock in the morning so that you can warm up a pot of water to make coffee. Or you can be the smart person who pops it in your Keurig and says, go. And if you're not evaluating your business of how do I speed it up so that you can take 10 minutes to give a customer a genuine experience because you're processing the orders faster and you're moving all the paperwork along faster. If somebody sits there in front of you and you're going, or they walk in and they say, hey, Kyle, it's good to see you. Your customer number one more time. And they type it in, everything pops up, and you say, we've got you all set. What piece of equipment do you need?
Mm. So I want to ask a question about that. And by the way, you said I'm a hardcore software guy, which I probably am. My in-laws call me the Geek Squad. Like, hey, can you fix my Wi-Fi? I'm like, I'm not. That's not what I'm doing. But um, anyways, I want to talk about labor. You mentioned people, and you're talking about the guy at the counter who's not paying attention, or he's on his phone, but it's not the desk phone. He's on his cell phone. He's missing phone calls, as we've talked about. And a lot of times what happens is there's problems and people are overwhelmed. You throw more people at it and not necessarily solving the root cause. Labor is often the biggest expense for a rental company. How should they be thinking about labor? How do they structure the organization? How do you find great people? Just talk to me about the people side, right? Because we're on the people business in a sense.
Mm.
Having great people is important. How does a rental company think about the labor aspect of their business?
Um, yeah, the labor aspect is a giant one. That's just a beast in all of itself. I think that as an industry as a whole, we need to do a better job with helping the industry tell people that fixing equipment and repairing equipment and being a mechanic is cool.
Hmm.
It's super cool. It's great to have those skills because I think that every one of us feels the pain of finding great mechanics. I think you should overpay your mechanics.
Hmm.
I really do, and take good care of them so that it becomes a sexy job once again for all the people out there, because these machines aren't going away. Like, you're never going to dig a hole with anything besides, like, you can't click a button and a hole gets dug. You're going to need an excavator. And even if that excavator is completely battery operated, which has less moving parts, it will still need mechanics.
Hmm.
So, number one, I would say do whatever you can to take care of your mechanics. Number two, I would look at what in your business can you automate? And if that's as simple as a barcode, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me, I'm just spitballing here, is we all go to the grocery store and we can all self-scan ourselves. Now, we hate it, but I'll tell you right now, wouldn't it be, and maybe somebody could do this, could you walk out into an equipment yard with one of those scanner guns like they have at Target and have a barcode on the side of your machine and say, which piece of equipment do you want? You scan it with the barcode, and all of a sudden your machine puts that piece of equipment on a contract for that customer. And that customer even has, quote, like your frequent buyers club card. I mean, if we could do that as an industry, how much easier could we make it for our customers? But here's the biggest thing, back to your original question. What could we do for labor? Is I watch people when they come into a rental yard, they walk through the front door, they walk up to the counter, they say they want a piece of equipment, the counter person calls the yard person walks over and checks it out. It's not working right. The yard guy calls the mechanic comes over, fiddles with the key, changes out the starter or changes out the key. They get it running. The yard guy helps the customer load it up on the trailer. I mean, it turns into this massive labor. And if one of those people calls in sick, you got a problem. And I would say you should look at what things can you do to make it an easier process and minimize the amount of labor that's in it.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And you said overpay your mechanics. I love that too. In my mind, for a business like the software engineers, like the mechanics, there's the things that no one sees, but you know when it's not working right. But ultimately, you're giving a reliable, great service, right? That was sort of the analogy in my mind. Dan message, and that's sort of how car rentals work. Like Hertz does that today, right? So you can scan things in faster, and a lot of this is like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think as what Josh Nickel has said, the rental companies are generally using proven technology, was I think the phrase he used, which was like another phrase, and a nicer way of saying like late adopters on things. But
Yeah.
the automotive industry in some ways has sort of put the path ahead of us of what we need to do. And we got to get great people. We got to overpay our mechanics, but a lot of it's just building systems and processes to supplement, the already great people that are working within the rental industry.
Yeah. And I think too, I think that there's going to be a big change in the next 3 to 5 years, which the quality of mechanics is going to matter more. That's why I say overpay them. Also overtrain them. I think that a lot of the fleet is going to go electric. And I think the main reason why it's going electric is everyone says the environmental impact, sure. But I think the bigger impact is that they're easier to maintain. And outside of customer damage, there's not as much. I mean, you're not changing out the same fuel filters. You're not having to round up some of the things that factor into it. And if the maintenance costs go down on them, people are going to start evaluating that. You know what I mean? If you look at a mini excavator and you look at a 19-foot scissor, you have more technical problems with a mini excavator than you do a 19-foot scissor. And I think people are going to start looking at their companies of how can we have fleets that cost us less to run?
Hmm.
You know, and I don't know if anyone's really thought about that, but I think the smart people are going to be the ones that say, you know, we've got to be competitive. How do we adjust our fleets to gain an advantage?
Hmm.
And if you lead that, I can tell you right now, it's going to look pretty darn sexy for everybody who's coming in. If you're going to be one of the forerunners of, I have mastered how easy it is to rent equipment from me. I've led my market in the type of fleet that I bring. I mean, people don't realize, but it's hard for the big five to do that. A small rental house with 3, 4, 5 locations, they could change the entire industry because they're small enough and flexible enough and easier to adapt. You know, Josh said it perfectly when he said, you know, we're slow to adapt, but I think it's because we look to the big five to prove it. And I think as small companies, we can actually be more nimble, because if it doesn't work, we can adapt something else. But once one of the big five makes the decision, I mean, it's $1 billion investment.
Yeah, that sort of excites me because, like, you know, when we started Quiply over 4 years ago, it was around online renting because the Nationals had proven that technology. But now that we've sort of caught up, it's like we're working and talking to a lot of groups who are trying innovative things that, like, I hope the next big innovations in the next 5 years are driven from the independents, and the Nationals are scrambling to catch up. And I listened to a podcast with Mark Zuckerberg was on it, and they were talking about the success of Facebook early on, and he was like, you know, there was, you know, MySpace and Friendster and all these things. These bigger companies had the opportunity. They either realized it or didn't realize it. And even if when they did realize it, they fumbled it. Most of the time, the big company's going to fumble the opportunity. And I think that's what I'm excited about. It's like there's a lot of energy with the independents, and you work with a lot of independents as we do. And my hope is that in the next few years, that the next like level of innovations are happening at the local player, because that is when the Nationals are then put on their heels and not, you know, the other way around.
You're exactly right, and I think you're brilliant too, because the industry as a whole, and the recent conversation that I had with Josh and Jeff is we sat down and it was, you know, you really got to cater who's the next generation coming up. So it's not just how are we evolving as an industry, but how are our buyers changing going forward. You know, I rolled up to a job site the other day, and I rolled up to the job site. I go in with the sales rep. We go call on the job site, and the project manager looked like he was 12. And I kind of sat there for a second. I did a double take, and the superintendent looked like he was 14. And I kind of looked at these two guys, and I was like, holy crud. It was literally both of these guys' first projects out of college. And I realized, if this is the next wave of people coming in, the way they order fleet, the way they manage fleet, the way they interact, the way they communicate, if we don't evolve, they'll find some other solution. You know, if it, like right now, Uber, cell phones, all of those things, what are we looking at as an industry that if they sit there and they say, look, I order everything on Amazon, but yet when I call up and I try to get a piece of equipment from, and I'm going to mention my experience with Home Depot. I walked into Home Depot to get a piece of equipment, and I'm going to tell you right now, it was absolutely brutal. And what I mean by that is I went walking in there, and as I walked in, you know, I had to do, you know, verify, I had to get my license out, I had to do, and it went on and on and on and on and on and on. And they have one person helping you, and 45 minutes later, I'm finally loading up a $200 dump trailer. And I went, this is massively inefficient.
Yeah. And the National, they're just sitting there ready to, I mean, they're not going to go away, but you can build sustainable independent companies underneath their failures in a sense. And I think, I don't know if I've told you that obviously the reason we started Quiply was my experience renting online from Home Depot. So, you know, that is the genesis of
I remember that. Yeah.
Home Depot. And I'm curious, like these 12 and 14-year-olds on these project sites, are they look that age because they don't have beards like you? Is that the assumption? If you don't have a long beard, then you're probably 12.
Yeah, that's exactly it. No, you could tell they were probably, I mean, I say they look like they're 12, but they're 20 years old. And when you roll up and you see somebody and you're like, wow, he's got his earbuds in and he's sitting at his desk and the whole thing. And I was like, wow, this is not, and it was an epiphany for me because I realized, here's the thing. The market is evolving. The buyers are changing. And we need to make sure we're on the front end of that. You're on the cutting edge of it. And you really are. You're sitting there and you're asking for Quiply, how do we make this the next generation? And I think that there's way too many companies out there where they're still doing orders the old-fashioned way. And the thing is they say, and I love the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And there's truth to that. But here's the other thing. Making a pot of coffee on an open fire with a kettle wasn't broken. But at the same time, it wasn't efficient.
Right. And like the horse and buggy, it was like, people were saying I want a faster horse, they weren't asking for a car.
That's right.
And I want to get to a question from my friend Renford here, which do you know Renford in Kansas? He's awesome. If you haven't met him, Star Equipment Rental. But so I want to kind of get back to the efficient rental growth stuff here. But so he asked if I want to grow my business, move from a sideline to full-time equipment rental, expand, get some, more team members, get some more fleet. What's a good strategy? Is it slow growth, following my local market demand, or do I need to go ahead and buy the big fleet and sell, get the fleet and then sell versus sort of grow into it? Really the question is, growing at the speed of cash, not overfleeting versus, obviously you can't rent when you don't have, was the phrase he used. So I'm curious how you would answer that for Renford in particular, but obviously there's a lot of lessons here for everyone else listening in.
Yeah, you got smart people on the call. My big one that I look at is, I think that if you rewind, we got taught a very interesting lesson the last 3 years. COVID and the lack of fleet actually changed the way that people buy. And it created a mindset of scarcity. So if you called up and you asked for a skid steer, whoever the manufacturer is, if you asked for and it's a brand, Dingo, a small walk behind, they were saying 24 to 36 months. And everybody freaked out because they said that opportunity will be gone and I'm going to miss the opportunity and it sucks. So when it came time to scale, what a lot of businesses did is they hoarded fleet. They bought whatever they could and they overspent. The truth is right now you can call up almost any manufacturer and they've got fleet sitting. They have stuff available. You call up your OEMs and say, what's my lead time on a skid steer? They're not telling you 24 months. They're not telling you 12 months. A lot of them are telling you, look, I can get it out to you in the next week to 10 days. I can get it to tell you out in the next month. Now, because of that, I think that we need to regain control of how we run our businesses. I think as business owners, you need to look at sustainable and smart scalability. And we got too used to, if we don't have the fleet, we're going to lose the deal. Well, right now, you can sit there and I would have a meeting with my top 10 accounts. And as a business owner, I would do this. Don't send out a sales rep. You do it. Call those people out, grab them one at a time, take them out to lunch, and sit down at the table and say, what does your business look like? More importantly, and write this down, what does your backlog look like for your business for the next 12 and 24 months? What fleet will you need, and how can I be a better partner to you? And if you ask that, everybody knows the Pareto principle, the 20-80 rule. 20% of your customers give you 80% of your business. When was the last time you had a conversation with those 20%? Now, if you ask those customers, what is their business doing? Is it growing? Is it flat? Is it shrinking? Let that kind of dictate it. Now, if you want to grow more, like Redford said, if you want to grow more, what I would do is I would sit down and I would evaluate, what are you damn good at? Back to the original part of this start of the podcast. Because if somebody says, well, right now there's huge opportunities for earth moving and excavation, you got to change your entire market plan if you're going to go out and buy a 310 excavator. Like it's different mechanics, it's different trucks, it's a different plan. But if you sit down and say, I want to gain more of the business I already have, I would also, at that luncheon with your top 10, here's the question: how have I been doing? Great. What opportunities do you have coming up? I've landed 2 or 3 projects. Perfect. How can we better serve you and be a better partner to you? And last but not least, do you know any other organizations or companies that could use our rental services?
Mm.
Now, a warm referral like that is worth its weight in gold. It's worth its weight in gold. And now the thing you're doing is you're growing internally. Guess how much that cost you? A lunch. What did you do? You solidified your current business, you got a referral and an endorsement, and you've learned about upcoming projects. If you sit down with one of your key accounts and the guy says, "Hey, Kyle, let me tell you, we landed the entire state of Georgia's landscaping renewal project. They're going to need 56 skid steers. I know you can't handle all that business, but man, are we excited." Let that dictate your buying rather than, well, I've got 6 and 2 of them are broken down, so I guess I'm buying 2 new ones. I don't think that's as good of a business plan of talking to your customers and asking them, if I went out and bought 10 more Mini X's, would you rent them from me?
Mm.
And those type of commitments are how you build a sustainable business. Now we're going to get into sales tomorrow, and I'll tell you how to go out if you want to gain market share and take it from your competitor, where you have to look at kind of sales reps you're hiring, how you recruit them, how you develop them, and what skills to give them. That's a whole nother conversation for tomorrow.
Mm. Well, I love what you just said there. I think that sort of summarizes a lot of what we talked about today on efficient rental growth, which, talk to your customers, your top 10. I know Renford. If you ask him, if they ask how is he doing, they're going to give him 11 out of 10 answers because he's that type of person. I likely doing a great job with his customers, but then asking them what products you have, how can I serve you better, right? Let your customers tell you what you should buy. Don't guess. Talk to your best customers, your biggest customers, and they're going to feel more bought in, right? They're going to feel more included, and they may be less tempted to go across the street because they feel like they're part of what you're building, and that sort of community aspect is really important. And the last thing you said was referrals, which is obviously worth its weight in gold. But I love that second part. It's just talking to people and asking them, how can I serve you better? What products do you have? How can I make sure I have the fleet that you need to get your job done better?
And I'll be blatantly honest with you, Kyle. If they do what you and I just said, I will 100% guarantee results. There's not a single person who's on this video right now that's listening to this that thinks that going and asking their customers, how can we be a better partner to you, is a bad idea. Would you give me a referral? Every single one of you watching this right now, but the problem is guess what we don't do? We don't talk to our customers, and we don't ask for referrals.
Yeah. And I think for us, we're been new to the rental industry. I'm, over 4 years now, but that has been a weakness, but it's also been a strength because what I've had to do every day is talk to people and ask them, what do you need? What features are we missing? Right. And I think we've had to learn that the hard way because I didn't have 100 years of rental experience. We had to do it ourselves, but it works. Right. And I think what we found is even if you're building things not the pace they want or it's not exactly what they want, if you're asking them, they feel included. And I think that's worth something. People want to feel listened to and want to feel part of what you're building.
That's the right answer. Every one of us right now, and it's kind of the overall theme of this whole thing, is that your customers will either help you or they'll destroy you. And if we listen and we genuinely care, software will make the process easier, but there's no substitute for genuinely caring for the success of others. If you care for the success of others, they're going to care for your success as well. And we raise the entire bar as an industry. What are you doing to make your equipment faster, safer, and more efficient?
It's great. So Renford just sort of messaged. Great answers. Thanks, Kyle and Elliot. Another question from Kyle, who I know Kyle as well. He's out of Virginia, Ace Hardware business with the rental division as well. And he said, thinking about correct mix of his fleet. So he said, I want to start breaking into the residential contractor builders in my area. Feel that knocking on doors with a do-it-yourself landscaper fleet. How do I choose the correct mix to make sure I have what I need to make those sales calls, which, I'm sort of thinking this through. It's probably a similar answer to what you just said for Renford.
Absolutely. If you want, and I'll give him a great piece of advice. And it's completely off the cuff, and everybody's going to listen to this thing and say, "Where's Elliot going?" Go out, find an HOA. If you've got an Ace Hardware, there is a minimum of 5 HOAs around your area. Go to that HOA, find out who the HOA president is, and ask when the next HOA meeting is, and ask if you can sponsor it by bringing Crumble Cookie. And you sit in the back with your Ace Hardware booth, showing the fleet that you have, showing how you are part of the community. And then you ask all those homeowners that come through there, how can Ace Hardware help you make your home more beautiful, bring up the value of your home, or help the contractors that are working on your home with better equipment? Now, the problem is we're looking for everyone to come to us. Guess when that homeowners association meeting is? In the evenings, when most of the time the Ace Hardware is wrapping up anyways. And because you're coming to where the people are at, guess how many other people are at that meeting besides your genuine, honest buyers? And if they're at a HOA meeting, there's somebody who gives a damn about their house. And if you want to crack into that market, you show up with a skid steer in the parking lot and a thing of Crumble cookies and some coffee, and you will be the most popular person. And I will guarantee you will build that Ace Hardware reputation of we connect and take care of the homeowner.
Well, I'm excited tomorrow. We'll talk more about building the sales organization as a one-person sales team and building that out. And some of that will be covered tomorrow. One question I'm thinking about, which sort of Renford asked about, I think Kyle's asking about it. So like, there's an element of like, you've done your lunches, you've done your 10 lunches, you've gotten your answers. And then you're looking at the bill at the ARA should go buy all this equipment. And there's that element of there's that gap of when you're writing the check and you've actually rented out and started to see that the demand is there. How do you think about that process? Because build it and they will come. You have to at some point get the fleet, right? And you can do all the market research you want in the world, but if you're the owner and you're funding this yourself, you got to stomach that a little bit, right? How do you get over that piece?
So I've learned, and I've been a big one. Look, I'm a sales guy, and I'll take that title and wear that crown to my death. I have always been, quote, instinctual. But if you sit down and if you've watched the movie Moneyball, and Moneyball with Brad Pitt, they basically learned that if you sit down and you follow the data, follow the genuine information that you've got. A lot of us, I think we run our business based on instinct. And I think there comes a time where if we're going to compete, everybody knows people are getting it cheaper than us. If they're getting free delivery, they're getting bulk discounts, and we're getting it at a whatever 9% or 8% or 7% interest rate, and our competitors getting it at 4%. The way we make up those margins is we have to watch the movie Moneyball. It's everyone's homework this weekend. And you're going to watch the movie Moneyball and you're going to say, how do I make data-driven decisions to tighten up my game? And I think that once we look at it, is if you're going to go out, rewinding to the beginning of your question, when you go to the ARA show and you've got your checkbook in hand and that person walks over and says, look, it's new and it's the favorite color of red. It's your favorite color of orange. We just did it in a new shade of blue. It's electric. Rather than you throwing down a check and them saying, we have a deal, it's this rate if you buy 3, it's this rate if you buy 10, and it's this rate if you buy 20, and you're buying 20 because you want the best rate. Those instinctual buying stuff is great. But we need to take this to the next evolution, which is let data-driven decisions help you better care for your customers. We made bad decisions during COVID. People did not buy the right fleet. Now we have people over fleeting, and we're starting to realize that bad business decisions can be really expensive. Now I'm going to give a final piece of advice, and it'll key up for tomorrow. The biggest thing that we got taught for the last 4 years, was if you if you owned a rental house, every homeowner on the planet was doing home projects. All the construction sites were, quote, essential workers. So the problem that ended up happening was the manufacturers stopped, but construction didn't. That gap in fleet created scarcity. It drove rates, good for all of us. It grew demand, good for all of us. It did everything that we needed to happen as an industry. The problem that happened is scarcity creates. My wife will never let me go grocery shopping with her when I am hungry because stuff ends up in the cart we don't need. Guess what time of the industry we're at right now? People bought stuff that they don't need. Now that we've overfleeted, and I've gone to people's rental yards here recently, and there's a skid steer with saran wrap around it. And I'm like, what's up with that? And they're like, yeah, we bought that last year. It still hasn't gone on rent. Holy crud, the amount of money you just got sitting there. Like, that isn't how you conduct business. And the thing is if I'm going to give anybody a piece of advice on this, I don't care if you don't have an outside sales team. You need to start building your sales, reaching out to people, and gain market share. You need to evaluate your business because realize that we weren't the only ones to overpurchase. And shareholders for the big five are going to demand results. And I'm going to tell you where they're going to start coming for each other and for all the mid to smaller size rental companies. And they're either going to look at acquisitions or it's going to get really ugly really quick.
And maybe both, because I feel like there's been acquisitions every other week. It seems like.
That's the right answer. That's the exact right answer.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to get really interesting. I think tomorrow I will make sure that we are prepared for great conversations on sales skills and sales tactics to gain market share.
And that's your secret sauce. That is your world-class at that. I'm excited for that. I think the theme for today, drive your business, not let your business drive you. So it starts around setting that strategy, setting who your niche is, customer base, what your fleet is, going to the ARA show with a plan. Hey, I've talked to all 10 customers, my top 10 customers. I've looked at my utilization levels. I've looked at the data. Okay, now when I go into that show, I'm not going to be distracted by the shiny booth with the dunk tank and all the other stuff, right? You got to plan for it. And I think we may have all gotten by on that for a while. And I think for software companies, people are like, well, what's Kyle know about running a rental company? Well, I know about rental software. I also know that software companies have been impacted by this, probably even more higher volatility, where interest rates and money was free and just grow, any valuation you want. Now software companies have to be profitable, and everyone's tightened down in the last 2 years. So I've seen it in our industry on the software side too. And it seems like that's where the rental industry is going. And it's not something to be scared of. I think that the rental companies that are efficient and operate at a high level are going to have outsized success, right? Which is a lot of what we talked about today. So
that's the right answer. 100%. That's the right answer.
Yeah. So great stuff today, Elliot. Thank you all for joining tomorrow, same time. We're going to talk about the anatomy of building a powerful sales team. And Elliot, I'd love to start off tomorrow with, as an individual, one person rental company, scaling up to a 10 location group, thinking about the sales levels as you go. Hey, how do I get my first 10 customers? Okay, now when and how do I hire my next salesperson? How do I build a sales organization, right? We'll cover all that tomorrow. So I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. Let's make sure we bring even more value tomorrow. And thank you for creating this, Kyle. I really and genuinely appreciate the fact that you bring this level of value for free to anybody who's willing to log on.
Yeah, well, it's fun for me, and I'm learning something every day myself. So thanks again, Elliot. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Outstanding. Thank you all.
See you guys.